We forfeit mercy when we take out a payday loan on grace. Grace and peace, everybody. Welcome to Sabbath School Study Group. This is part 3 of our 5-part series, Covenantal Love. I hope you're enjoying this study. I am, because we're talking about mercy forfeited today and looking at a parable that Jesus gives us in Matthew 18 to recognize we have the choice. We've got the choice to respond to the choice that God made first, which was to love us. But there is this alternate way of rejecting him that we may not be aware of. And we want to call it out today. But before we call it out, I want to thank you for calling us up, pulling up this site, pulling up this study and this video. If you feel impressed, please subscribe to the channel and by all means pass this video on to someone else. And whether or not you're watching us on a video sharing service, you can always go to our website. That's at changeministry.org. You're going to see this study, but studies on health, studies on prophecy, but always on truth at changeministry.org. And as always, we'd love to be where you are, whether it's for a weekend, whether it's for a day, or even for a series. Reach out to us, and that email address is contact@changeministry.org. Forfeiting mercy by taking out a payday loan on grace. Let's break this down, because a payday loan basically is it's a loan that we usually go to when we may not have a credit standard or a credit rating that's strong enough to loan from a bank. I've done this before. I actually did it not knowing that that's what the loan actually was. We had a repair that needed to be done on our car. It was a transmission. I think it was like $2,000, $3,000 more than what we had in the bank, which was not enough to cover that. And so we took out a payday loan. That was what was available at the mechanic's office. And I remember going to pay for that loan in this little place. It wasn't a bank. It was a building in a strip mall. And we paid, and by the grace of God, we paid that thing off in time to avoid, I think, something that was like 15 to 25% interest. Outrageous interest, right? It's a tough thing to do, but when you got to do it, you do what you got to do, and God still blesses. But we don't want to even be in positions to where we have to do that. And the same thing can happen when we are looking at God's grace, but opting to say, God, I'm going to meet your standard, but I'm going to meet it. I'm not going to accept the way that you've given it to me. That's what this brother does here in Matthew chapter 18, verse 23. Therefore is the kingdom of heaven likened unto a certain king, which would take account of his servants. So we have a king who's now going through his books. And as he's going through the books, he finds out, hey, somebody owes me a debt. So verse 24 says, when he had thus begun to reckon, one was brought to him, the one who owed him this debt, which owed him, in fact, 10,000 talents. So it's not just that the king is looking at the books and say, oh, somebody owes me. It's somebody owes me a lot. But it turns out it is a lot more than this person, not only what this person has. This is more money than they could ever hope to earn. Please note this. But what does this person who owes more money than he could ever think to pay off do? Verse 26 says, the servant therefore falls down and worships him. But look at what he says in his worship. Lord, have patience with me and I will pay thee all. This is an indebted servant. He owes money, a whole heap. And he knows he can't pay it all off. He worships. He falls down. Up to this point, he's doing everything that you would expect a believing Christian to do. But where does unbelief come in? When he says, I will pay thee all. That's where he fell. He fell further than when he actually rung up the debt. And that was thinking that there was some way that he could pay off this debt. This is what I mean when I say a payday loan, rather than accepting mercy, rather than accepting grace. That's what happens if we do anything short of receiving or opting or choosing to receive the promise of God, entering into the covenant of God, which says, I will pay it all. That's what Jesus says. And that's what God has said, I will accept as payment for the offering, because it's the only payment. It's the only number that can match what was lost. The only number that can match what God lost is what Jesus gives. That number, you and I can't meet it. I can see it. I can know it. I can look at a debt. I can see a receipt. I can look at a book. I can even see the price tag. But me seeing that tag is as close as I'm going to get to paying off that tag. Whether it's a Bugatti, whether it's a Lamborghini, whether it's a mansion, whether it's for an island, I could see it and know it, but I could never buy that in and of myself. I'd have a better chance of getting a Bugatti, a mansion, and an island than I would paying off the debt that I owe to God. That's how much we owe, but that's how precious Jesus' blood is. That's how amazing grace is. And that's how abundant mercy is. We're going to measure that in the next study. But for now, let's stop taking out these payday loans. Brothers and sisters, we got to remember, by our praying, by our praising, and by our pushing and working for God, we're not paying off our debt. We're praising God for the debt that Jesus paid.